So I want to introduce the panelists. This is not in order, but we have Desmond Milvenan of Ingalls and Volkers. We have Kent Redding of Berkshire Hathaway. We have Anna Lee of Moreland Properties, Gary Dolch of Sotheby's, Will Steakley of DEN, Ashley Stucki Edgar of Realty Austin, and Ryan Rodenbeck of Spyglass Realty. And we had a couple of folks that had to drop off the panel, and we were going to try to tie a couple of them in. Cord Shiflett and Eric Copper were dying to get tied in, but our AV doesn't support that. So that's something that will hopefully improve here as our AV equipment, allowing us to do so. And then another person, Kirk Lewis, lost a close family member the day before yesterday, so he was not able to make it. So thank you, Ashley Stucki and Ryan Rodenbeck, for filling in. And you guys were amazing. And there's so many wonderful top producers that are, and when I say top producers, you don't have to be a top producer to be amazing in this industry, obviously. Those are the people that I see over and over, and those are the people that I'm drawn to and attracted to. And so when I started organizing this event, I just started going down a list of people that do a lot of sales, and it just was really easy to figure out who would be a good fit for this. And I think we can all agree that we could quickly determine who we individually don't feel like would be a good fit for it. So, but with that said, I think that we all can agree that this business is not always easy. I think that we can all agree that we have many challenges that are beyond what's just in front of us in terms of challenges dealing with difficult customers, challenges dealing with difficult situations, and I think in many circumstances it's easy to have a misconception of the person on the other side of the table when they have to represent the best interests of their customers. So I just want to point that out, and I want to get started with the questions. So, panelists, there is a trend where it seems agents tend to communicate less by phone or face-to-face and more via email and text. Some agents work primarily by email and text, and I want to know how you prefer to communicate, what method of communication you believe fosters cooperation, and what type of communication styles are timeless to cooperation. So who wants to step to the plate first?
Okay, I'll jump out there. I wasn't going to talk at all, but yeah, I think the goal is to have both parties understand where the other side is coming from.
Please talk right into the microphone.
And I think it is easier when let's say I'm representing the seller, and my seller feels very strongly about something. I think it helps if I get a chance to explain to you where they're coming from, what is their motivation. Then when you go talk to the buyer and explain that, they might say, well, yeah, I get that. Maybe I don't agree 100%, but I understand it more, and are a little bit more willing to flex. So I think if all parties understand where the other side's coming from, you will have a better result for all.
On that note, I also think that I find that a lot of people are texting these days, and the problem with that is that you don't know what they're really meaning. So unless you pick up the phone and you talk to them, you have a much better way of communicating and understanding that. This text stuff is great if you want to do like a showing. I think sometimes, especially if it says, text or call, because you can get a quicker response. But you just don't know the person's tone of voice. And I think you can blow a deal very quickly by this texting. And I understand there's a whole generation that likes to text. I like to text. But if you could pick up the phone and call the other agent, even if that means, hey, I have an offer coming, instead of just all of a sudden it appearing in your mailbox via email. But I think, texting is great for some things, but bottom line, good old communication, picking up the phone and talking to someone, hands down, will get you a lot further.
Yeah, I agree. Texting and emails kind of lack empathy and emotion. So You can get a lot said. I mean, I'm the kind of, you guys know I'm pretty bad at responding to all my emails immediately. So you know to call me on my phone. That's just kind of how I do my business. But yes, I think if you can pick up the phone, you can get more out in 2 minutes than you can over 2 weeks over email. And it goes a long way, especially in this market where things are tight, deals are happening quickly, and you want to get everything you can across. But then, of course, that being said, an email with the right cover letter, the right disposition of exactly where your client is, it's something that is important when, especially if you want that information to be translated onto the client, their seller, if there's a potential, you don't remember everything you're on the phone about, right? So it's nice to kind of reiterate everything you said over the phone, over an email, in front of your offer, and kind of go all the way through. So I agree.
Yeah,
But I do text a lot too, simply because it's a great way to communicate quickly. Right now, sometimes it's important if you have a response like, hey, I can't get to you right now. I'll be tied up for the next 30 minutes. I'll be back with you at 2 o'clock. So it's important. It's a great tool, and it's definitely helped improve our industry for sure, just because it helps on timing and transparency, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone says here, but the one thing I would say might be somewhat of an exception is every now and then I'll list a property that has 10, 15 offers and not able to have a 30-minute conversation with everyone. I do my best to call, but I think some agents need to know that if a listing agent has 20 offers on a property, they're not going to be able to have lengthy conversations. And I do my best to call everyone back, and I think it's a good practice to call, and if they don't answer, leave a message. But you also have to be cognizant of what the listing agent's going through, especially if you list $195,000 property.
Sure.
So.
And by the way, if anybody in the audience has a question, we're going to do questions as we end my questions to the panelists. So, but if you do have a question related to this specific question at hand, feel free to raise your hand and ask it. Any questions about the communication piece of it? Texting, phone calls? Does the group, who loves texting in this group as the sole means of communication? Nobody will admit it. I know you're out there because a lot of people do it.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback just a little
Sure.
bit? One thing that you mentioned was the timeless piece, and I think that is critical no matter how we communicate, but start the conversation with kind, gratitude, courteous. I don't know about you guys, but when you make that first call with an agent, you kind of define the whole transaction by making that phone call and just letting them know we're going to get through this, we're going to land the plane, and we're going to work together. And to me, starting like that seems to keep you from getting off course as you go through the transaction. So that's the timeless piece, in my opinion.
I heard a lot of wisdom behind that. I feel like a lot of times realtors feel like they can't be friendly or communicate because they represent the best interests of their clients. And that's just not true. We can be friendly. We can lay the groundwork for a successful transaction, and we can encourage the other party, somebody on the other side of the table, and say, look, if we can make this work, we're going to make it work. I'm going to do everything in my power. So thank you for pointing that out.
You actually are representing the best interest when you start that conversation like that, right?
Exactly. You are representing the best, if you couldn't hear, I'm representing the best interest of your clients. And if you guys, the AV guy here had mentioned it's really hard to hear you, so if you could talk like literally right into the mic when you're talking, as awkward as that is, I'd appreciate it. The group will be able to hear you better. So, what is your top pet peeve when working with other agents? No names or recent events, so there are no hard feelings, and so we don't break any ethics rules. But what are your top pet peeves in working with other agents?
How much time do we have?
We've got about an hour.
I think it's the email offer that just shows up, and you're like, that could have so been lost.
It's
like,
the worst is when you just get carbon copied on a DocuSign offer,
Yeah.
and it just shows up, and that.
And you're like,
is kinda-
okay, but is
Dot loop.
Yeah. Totally.
No, I think mine is no pre-approval letter. I mean, how do we not get past this now? I mean, I swear 30% of the offers I receive don't have a pre-approval letter. And how can you be taken seriously without a pre-approval letter? And I remember when I first started this business, agents would please submit pre-approval letter. I thought we were past having to put that in MLS remarks, but we're not. Bad use of technology, you know, I know some people may not be up with the technology, but it's our job, so.
For me, it's just doing what you say you're going to do is a big deal for us because, you know, if you don't show up to a showing that we've set up for the last 2 days and had our sellers jumping through hoops to get the lawn mowed and get the maid through there and get it in its best light, and then at the last minute you call and cancel for whatever reason, or you know, you say you're going to do something tomorrow, I'm going to get the checks delivered to the title company, and then I have to go back around and find out that they didn't get delivered. I didn't ever know why. In that case, I wouldn't mind a text. Just tell me what's going on. So I think just doing what you say you're going to do helps the transaction, keeps the relationship going, and furthers the opportunity to put a deal together.
For me, the pet peeve of mine is when agents get emotionally involved in the transaction and really become a part of the transaction instead of the representative. And you can tell by the phone calls when they refer to we, their client, and them we. This is what we want to negotiate. This is what we want to do. And I always feel like that, you know, they're really becoming a part of the, emotionally attached to the transaction. And I find that sets a difficult tone to start, is that we need to separate ourselves and, you know, and work together. We should be the two agents in a sense, for me.
Yeah, I agree
So
with that.
I guess a question I have for the panelists and for you guys too is just how are you feeling about, I feel like, you know, everyone has these assistants and coordinators and transaction management people. Like when are we, you know, are you guys liking that? Is it best just to call each other and get it over with rather than, you know, that's one of the problems I've been seeing is that too many hands in the thing and you just can't keep up with the communication, really.
Yeah, I have a licensed assistant, but I try not to get her involved until after the negotiations,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think for coordinating showings, I think it's very helpful because usually we're out in the field, interacting, interfacing with clients. But if you can have someone who can actually help when someone calls to get back quickly for a showing, because we all get those calls where someone wants to show a house in an hour. And it's challenging when you're trying to interface with a client and try and give them your attention, but you can't, and you're out there trying to text a show up appointment for the future. So I think it's important to have, you know, some sort of a bench behind you to help when you are, if you're listing more than, you know, 3 or 4 properties, I think is important.
I do want to interject that and acknowledge, and I think the group would agree, that there are some differences when you and I go to sell a $150,000 house that has 20 offers on it and a $2.5 million house where the person had to get the maid crew, you know, and the lawn people and whatnot to get the house ready for the showing. There's a bit of a gap between really the perspective of those that are selling, you know, lower price range homes and higher price range homes. And sometimes somebody selling lower price range homes go and sell a $5 million house, and they go to showing and they're treating those showings like they would treat, you know, they're going to show 15 $200,000 houses. And so I do think it's important to learn and to educate ourselves on what's courtesy and what's customary at the different levels of the playing field in Austin. And it's true, like people that are selling a 10,000 square foot house have a pretty significant effort that they have to go through to get it ready for sale. The same token, people that are buying a 10,000 square foot house, it is possible that they show up and say, this isn't going to work. And you're like, well, please go inside. Please.
Just go inside. Just go inside.
These people went through a lot of trouble.
Come in, say no.
You know, Brian, that's true. I mean, I sell all over the map. I'll go down, I mean, I do 100,000 all the way up. And the one thing that I think is extremely important, and one of the reasons we're here today, it's all about communication. And it's all about respecting the buyer and the seller. And I think if we can remember that, no matter what the price listing is on that house, that's where you're going to be more successful in the long run. Just be respectful and courteous to each other and treat each other as fairly as you can. And don't try to argue all the time. I mean, that's what, you've got some people who just are ready to, you know, fight right off the bat. And I think if you can just step back and treat each other nicely, then you can get a lot further in the negotiation.
one of my pet peeves is feedback, because I think it is respectful to the seller no matter what the price point, especially if the market shifts again. I was doing this a long time ago when things weren't just hopping right off the market. It helps everybody if you give good, reasonable feedback, because then you can help the sellers decide what their next step needs to be. And I just think that's common courtesy, whether it's, you know, 150,000 or 2 million, to just give some feedback.
Yeah, on that same token, I've had several, I use Showing Suite, and it sends 4 emails, and I've had several agents email me and ask to be removed from the Showing Suite emails. Don't do that. I mean, you know, unsubscribe if you want to, but.
I hate Showing Suite, just so everyone knows that. I
It was
hate-
him, no.
My name is Gary, and I hate
My
Showing
name,
Suite.
yeah.
You know, feedback is an interesting topic, and we won't spend an awful lot of time on it, but I will say, and this is again a difference between, and I'm speaking of my personal experience selling houses. I've sold a lot of $200,000 houses, and I've sold expensive houses, and I'll have clients, and I will literally, I think the most houses I've shown her today was somewhere in the 25 to 30 range, and I don't ever want to do that again, but I have done that before. I mean, literally hammered through them, and then I've got, you know, people asking for feedback on the way back, and I'm like, I don't even remember. I'm so sorry. You know, if I'm showing really expensive houses, I'm going to probably show 1 or 2 or maybe 5 tops, and those people are going through significant amount of effort to sell those houses, and of course their listing agents are as well. If I'm the listing agent, and if I'm the seller, I'm going to want them to follow up, and I'm going to want feedback. It is, in my opinion, very appropriate for that listing agent to call me back and ask for and pry on specific feedback. And as the buyer agent, I want to provide them the feedback that is clear, that's honest, but that gives them something that they can go back to their seller and make their seller feel like we now understand, you know, the sort of the takeaway from that, and whether it's an opportunity or not, or potentially an opportunity. So I would just encourage the group, if somebody's asking for feedback, which you're going to get more requests for feedback the higher the price range in my experience, to give them the time and the respect to do that, because they've gone through a lot to offer you the opportunity to see that house. Laura?
To me, it's a professional courtesy no matter what the price range. I mean, if you ask me a week later, I'm not gonna remember the house, honestly, but if I get a showing suite right after I've shown the property, I'm happy to do that. The thing about it is, the seller knows that you showed the house. And if you don't provide the feedback, that is not gonna reflect poorly on me as the listing agent. It's gonna reflect poorly on you. And I just think it's a professional courtesy that we should take a tiny bit of time to give some feedback. After all, we want our market to be healthy. We don't want listings to lay on the market a long time. So if we can help a seller, whether you're a buyer agent or a listing agent, it's a professional courtesy. That's just my opinion.
Did everybody hear that? Okay, she was just suggesting that it's always courtesy to give feedback regardless of the price range. I definitely agree with that. So, another question? Did everybody get that as well?
It's the lockbox.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that it's important to understand that sometimes, it's always courtesy. I try to sometimes I don't feel like giving feedback because I've got so many things going on, but I'm investing in relationships with other people. I'm taking that extra effort to give them something of value, and they've given me something in return by allowing us to see that house. And so, but there are many circumstances where giving feedback is at the exact spot is not always convenient nor appropriate. It's just I would say for those listing agents that call and leave a message, don't wait for me to call you back. Call me back again, and I will give you feedback. So any other pet peeves that we didn't discuss? Oh, yes, sir.
Comment on the feedback. When I get an automated request for feedback, or I get a phone call, the phone call is kind of, I think, Kent, you said when you start off the conversation with that friendly cooperative, that shows me that the listing agent is really interested. And it does start that process that early. I may be writing an offer, it's a good time to talk.
Everybody get that? He was saying that it is, if he's getting a phone call or some automated email, he said he's going to pay attention to the phone call. That's the more personal it is, the really a better opportunity it is for the seller, right? Puts the seller in a better opportunity to sell the house, and for us buyers to get, to give it attention.
Yeah, because the phone call actually gives you an opportunity to even communicate better, especially if you're not there at the front door to show the property, and it's just a call first go. Your feedback, just sitting on a feedback report asking for it, but when you pick up the phone and call the agent and say, how was your experience? What did you see? Was something wrong? Was there some deferred maintenance? And you can actually have that conversation with them in real time. So I think there's those automated forms, there's only so much you get out of that technology, right? And sometimes I get great feedback. Hey, I found that the back door was unlocked. It's things like that. So again,
Oh,
phone
that's
calls.
a pet peeve. That's right. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you finished?
No, I'm talking.
Lock the doors. When you're showing a house, I've had many experiences lately where my seller will call me and say all our doors were unlocked. And I know that it's hard because you think you've locked it, and then the seller or the buyer goes back through. Just make a quick, run around the house and make sure they're all locked before you leave. I think that looks bad on our profession, because then the sellers always say, well, who are these agents? And then you have to go, So just try to lock all the doors, please.
And if you remember that you didn't lock the door,
Call the
go
agent.
back.
Yeah.
And don't forget to leave the key in the lockbox. I have actually gone 3-4 houses and noticed a key from 3 or 4 houses back in my pocket. I apologize, whoever the listing agent was, on that house.
Oh, that would be scary.
So let's move on to the next question. What are the most positive character attributes that you've seen in working in cooperation with another agent? I know the negative things are easier to low-hanging fruit, but the positive attributes, the people that you're working with in Austin where you say, you know what, that person's amazing because of whatever.
Well, I would say offering terms that are reasonable to the seller. If the seller's open title somewhere, and that's a good one. Not 15 days for option fee for $100. Not a third-party financing that has 30 days on it. Just tight offer terms with a pre-approval.
Nobody is nice in this town,
Nobody's
apparently. Nobody's nice.
I think, this is a craft for all of us, and we all focus and specialize in different sectors of the market, different neighborhoods, and we're all learning. So I appreciate it when I'm in a new neighborhood that I'm not necessarily the expert on, and the agent actually, and I admit that, and the agent gives me like their full download of, pockets in the schools and everything else, and, because we all catch ourselves at times where we're outside of our little comfort zone. So I appreciate it, and I've seen a lot of agents who come back to me and who actually, Will, you do a lot downtown in West Austin, what are you doing north of 183, and so it's helpful, and I see a lot of agents who respond to that, so.
Losing gracefully.
Yeah.
I go up against Kent a lot, and we've gotten to be good friends about that, so.
But you're not sitting next to each other.
Well, that's intentional. This is an act.
Yeah.
Not that gracefully. I think promptness, the thing that I appreciate the most when I'm working with agents is just the response. Just even if it's a quick email or a quick voicemail, is a prompt response within a reasonable amount of time. So we're not just looking and finding and what's going on and we don't know, we can't find the agent. So promptness is when I see that, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting zero focused on the deal that's at hand and just taking that as priority over other things, because we're all getting hit with a million different things at once. But when you're negotiating the deal and you have an emotional buyer and seller on the line, on both ends of the transaction, timeliness, and I think people who are at the best of their game understand that, respect that, and, we typically get deals done. So I think it's just transparency and being on the ball.
I have appreciated when another agent will proactively offer to do something, and it may be something as simple as drawing up an amendment. But just saying, hey, I can see that you're really busy. I can draw that up for us and send it out. It can be the smallest tokens of courtesy that make such a big difference, and just kindness. And like, there's certain people that I do deals with. I did a deal recently with a girl, and I could just feel the kindness and the caring behind her, and I just knew, like, this is a great person. She cares about people. It wasn't just me. It was just and she wanted to get the deal done, and it was great. And she didn't want conflict, but sometimes you have to deal with that. And anyway, so that's what comes to mind for me.
I enjoy it if I'm working with an agent, and let's say we've got a particular buyer and a seller, and it's our job to facilitate to where everybody walks away happy. If I can get an agent that will brainstorm, well, what about this? What about this? Not saying that we're going to say yes for our client, but brainstorm on how can we make this work for everybody. Let's us discuss the options before we go back to our buyer and seller.
And you can't do that on text or email. You have to talk to somebody. That's what it all boils down to, is just the communication side of things and setting the cadence and letting the agents put deals together, because that's our job. That's what we do. We put them together. We figure out a way to put a deal together. I love that. That's great.
And I will say that in regards to negotiating, there are many times where I've had to deliver news that I know that the other realtor is not going to want to hear, or a term that they're not going to want to receive. And there have been times where I just say flat out, you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. I'm the messenger. I represent my client. I don't like to be a bad guy, but I've got to deliver this message, and here it is. And I'm going to hang up now. Call me later. So, but definitely communication, being upfront, and not assuming that it's the realtor that's the problem, or that the realtor is crazy when they lob a crazy counteroffer or something that doesn't make sense, because they may be keenly aware that it doesn't make sense. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I appreciate it when we're involved in multiple offers, where the listing agent will actually return the phone call to tell you whether you received the contract, was disappointed in losing it. I have been involved in about 5 transactions where I never heard from the listing agent, and even though I called several times, I never found out whether our offer was even in the running.
Multiple offer situations. That's her frustration and the lack of communication from the listing agent. My understanding is that it is the decision of the seller how the listing agent handles that situation. However, we all know that the listing agent, more often than not, sets the tone of the process, and the clients will follow their lead. And so I think that I have the same frustration. If I'm going through the time and effort to put together an offer, number one, I'd like to have it be a level playing field. The way that I typically handle a multi-offer situation when I'm selling a house is I don't necessarily say we'll make a decision by this time on this date, which is a perfectly fine approach. But if I get an offer and then I get another offer, I'm typically going to call the first offer and say, hey, just so you know, we got another offer. If you guys want to submit another one, I'd let everybody know. We're in a multiple offer situation. You should probably put your best foot forward, best and final up front, because we're going to look at all of these and we're going to make a decision. And in that case, sometimes the seller will decide to counteroffer one of the best offers, not necessarily just accept it. So there's a variety of situations, but 100%, if somebody takes the time to submit an offer, please, as a listing agent, consider communicating with everybody involved so that they know where you stand at some point. And that, what point is really up to the seller. Laura?
Also love it if listing agents wouldn't hold the offer for a week or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Amen.
it's supposed to be presented timely, and waiting 5 to 7 days is not timely. There is no place that you can go in the world where you cannot respond to an offer. There's just not. I know that pretty much firsthand. So,
Any thoughts on any of the questions that you heard that you want to add to?
Agree with holding the offers. That's frustrating.
Okay. Would you agree that it's the seller's decision whether you hold the offer?
Of course.
Absolutely.
But like you said, more often than not, you control that tone.
Okay.
You could still communicate that. My seller said, I'm sorry, but this is what they want to do.
Exactly.
So at least let them know, because they've got buyers on the other end that are freaking out. So,
Well, and it's different if you list on a Thursday and you put, in the MLS that we're not going to accept any offers till Monday, but there's no communication or, they're just holding the offer and I get back to you.
Next question, and I hope that this doesn't seem redundant, but from your field experience, what is the number one way Austin realtors can improve their cooperation with other realtors? Number one way.
set the tone, start picking up the phone and calling everybody, set a precedence on, look, I'm here to make this deal happen, I'm willing to work with you, can't wait to work with you. I love it when agents come with that attitude. I think we've sold a lot of deals to agents that I've never known before. And now, when I see them show one of our listings or they want to, put an offer on a deal, I look forward to working with them again if the deal went really well the first time. And I think that goes a long way. So there's a lot of agents in Austin, and I don't know everyone yet, but I'd be happy to do a deal with any of y'all, especially if you pick up the phone and call me. So, and I take multiple offers on some of my listings right now.
Me too.
I think one thing that's important is representing ourselves well. I don't know if you guys see this sometimes, but I overhear other agents talk about, well, she's just a knucklehead. That's a crazy agent, or he's a nut. Talking to your clients like about other agents, and you may feel that way. And certainly there are some knuckleheads, and I've been one many times. But that doesn't represent us well. Don't say that. I mean, we need to set the tone, and because consumers and clients already think kind of low of us a little bit, and it's our job to raise that up and just keep that kind of talk to ourselves. Don't tell our clients the other agent's crazy. Just focus on the black and white. I think that would be a way that number one thing we could do to raise, awareness of our field and our craft.
Yeah, I think raising the bar is important for all of us to kind of daily walk that walk every day. One thing too is I always, when I'm showing houses or anywhere, I act as if I'm on the camera. Because these days you never know when you're going to be on camera, and so you just, whether you know you are or not, just there's a lot of eyes out there in this the technology in the world. So just keep that in mind, because I've realized too late that I was, so just a warning. There's a lot of eyeballs out there.
Yeah, being professional, and I think Kent said it, take the emotion out of it, and when you're negotiating, not being so emotional. I see that a lot.
Yep.
Renee?
One of the principles of the code of ethics is the golden rule. And it's not he who has to go makes the rules. It really is treating each other the way we would want to be treated. And so if you can ask yourself in a transaction, is this the way I would want to be treated if I was on the other end of that transaction? I think it would make a difference.
Agreed.
Bill?
Okay, you guys are gonna not like this much maybe, but I think the worst thing that's happened to us being kind and courteous to our colleagues is when the contracts changed to say we have 3 days to deliver the option fee. The old contract said we are presenting the contract and the option fee, and we had to go to somebody's office and say,
How old are you, Bill? I'm just kidding. You're totally right. You're right. It is true. It is true. Doesn't happen nearly as much these days. Yes, ma'am.
Brian, piggybacking on what Will said, act as if you're on camera. Just assume every email you send can be forwarded.
There they are, yeah.
Yeah, another pet peeve is when I get negotiations forwarded from an agent, from their client, directly to my inbox. That obviously it wasn't wordsmithed or anything. That's just poor form. So, I mean, you should be the representative, be the shield for your client, make sure the communication's professional and on point.
Being humble, I noticed, I'm starting to think about everything that I've complained about today. I've done every single one of them at some point in my career, so.
Or when we get that offer that's 400,000 lower than asking, take a deep breath. Thank you for your offer. I'll talk to my client and get back with you. Not hang up the phone.
And please don't send inspection reports unsolicited. Please don't send those. I don't want to see those. Those are not good.
That's one of my future questions on this list.
Oh, sorry.
We'll talk about inspection reports. So, how have you used cooperation with other agents to close a lot of sales? How do you think cooperating has really actually helped get a deal done?
Well,
I
for
think
us,
that's the only way to get it done.
Yeah.
there's a lot of cooperation, especially with people that you've done transactions with in the past, I think, and friends in the business. When we have a new listing coming up, we talk about it with those people before it ever hits the market, and typically we'll sell, a third of our listings before they ever come to market. And there's some broker undergrounds and different sites out there that kind of do that, but I think the whole communication thing and picking up the phone, especially if there's an agent that that has buyers or works a specific area, just to give them a courtesy call, let them know that it's coming to the market. We put a lot of deals together recently. Elite 25 does that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of different ways to share that information with groups of agents, and I think that's just another way to communicate and makes people feel good. If I have a buyer and I know about something that's going to hit the market before anybody else does or most people do, my buyers really appreciate that, and it makes me look good, and it ends up being a good result for the seller usually. So.
Yeah, I don't think I realized the value of having a network of agents until you really get into a deal with them and things really go smoothly because you met them at events like this or the PT50 or ABJ or whatever it is. But I can tell you that if I have a deal with someone that I've, had drinks with, it's going to go better.
Just don't drink while you're doing the deal.
How about those open houses? Can't we have wine?
What's that?
Open houses. There's drinks at open. You can work anyway. No, do not drink while working with your client for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's encouraged. That's encouraged.
Yeah.
That's good. Have wine.
Do you feel that you actually need to? I know you had said cooperation is the only way to get a deal done, Ashley. But do you feel like somebody needs to be a cooperator, generally, kind of what we're talking about today, the spirit of cooperation, to be successful?
Definitely.
So do you know of anybody that is a jerk that's successful?
Yeah.
So the question again is, do you need to be cooperative in order to be successful?
I think the answer is yes. I've met people that are jerks that are successful, but it's not long lasting.
I think it'd be how do you define success?
How do you define success?
Investing in the lives of others around me, my family, my friends and coworkers. Whether you sell one deal or 100, that's how I define it. And so long-term success, to be able to do that, we have to cooperate to have long-term success.
So what is the top benefit in your business, the top benefit for you personally in your business as it relates to cooperating with other agents? What have you gotten out of it?
Friends, people that you started off just being associates, and at the end of the day, you say, I've really enjoyed getting to know you and hope to work with you again. And if you see them, as somebody mentioned earlier, showing your listing, you're so excited, and you can call them and say, oh, I hope we can do a deal together again. And just being, at the end of the day, when everybody's sitting at that closing table and everybody's happy, that's a feeling that you're on top of the world when you feel that.
Better negotiations, obviously.
Yeah, I think it can be a lonely business sometimes out there, and I think it's a lot more fun when you have a lot of friends that are in it. I think it makes you feel good about what you do for a living, and having a lot of friends that you invest your time with and your industry, and continue to try to do things like this and sharpen your skills and discuss these topics, I think is really a part of what makes what we do a lot of fun. So I think it's great.
So if you could change anything about the culture of Austin Realtors, what might that be? Because there is a culture. If you go to New York City or LA or Austin, Texas, there's a culture. What's our culture? What would you change about it?
Well, Austin's a pretty laid-back town, you know, and I think some people might take that to an extreme, you know. Like if you're on vacation, just make sure there's some contact that we can communicate with, or at least respond to a text. But, you know, this is a small town. I've been here 37 years. It's growing, but reputation is king. So just, you know, just, again, take your profession, be proud of it.
Being professional, and you know, a lot of things that people write on these forums, I think they need to think about how they're going to look back on that in 5 years if they were to see what they wrote, and is that professional? I've seen people attacked on forums where, you know, it's like, come on guys, you know, people jump to conclusions on forums. I think that needs to be dialed back a little bit.
I think coming from curiosity is really, really big, because I think we all, you know, we want to get deals done, obviously. We want everyone to be happy. And then when something does go wrong, rather than just assuming that, oh, they did that on purpose, or oh, that happened because of this, I just ask first. Say, hey, did you know that, you know, this was going on or whatever? And at least you can come from that way. And I think at the end of the day, that helps everything just kind of come back together.
Well, one thing I do love about our agents in Austin is Austin's a pretty kind of open table city. You know, we always communicate a little more. We're friendlier. We'll tell you pretty much anything. So just ask an agent questions and they'll usually answer. You know, in New York, everyone's kind of shielded. Other markets are different, but in Austin, everyone's very friendly, very helpful, and use that to your advantage.
I actually came from the commercial side of the business. I was in commercial real estate until I started my company in 2007. And in Austin, and I did work all over the country, and I can tell you, you know, the culture on the commercial side of the business is ultra competitive, a lot of testosterone. It's like head to head. It's really amazing, and I made good friends with people with competitors, but it was like we were in a fight, or you know, we were pretending like we were friends, but. That is one reason that I personally chose to get on the residential side of the business. Really, I wanted to try it out. I wanted to see, is it the same or whatnot? But a big part of the difference is access to information and sharing of information. On the commercial real estate side, information is held, you know, tight to the vest, and information is dollars. And so they don't share the information. And if you own or have control over a certain product, that's golden, and you don't give it away. In our business, we share the information. We have the IDX feed. We all have the listings out there, and there's plenty of business to go around for all 11,000 of us. And so that's a huge difference. And the people on the residential side of the business, I feel like I don't know, it's just an environment that's competitive but less contentious, and I enjoy it much more. So appreciate, I would say, what we have, because I've seen it a lot worse, and I've done business on the East Coast, and it's terrible. I don't know how they do it. People are like really hardcore over there. Anything else on culture in Austin? So what are some real-world examples where realtors must act upon their fiduciary duty to their customer over cooperation? And I've heard a little bit of these examples earlier. Any particular examples that come to mind? So cooperation, I'm sorry, fiduciary duty to your customer over cooperation, and some of those real world examples where we've had that happen.
Well, I don't think Gary's gonna like this very much, but, I've had a buyer tell me that, I need to send the inspection report. So, you know, you gotta do it.
I'll send it right back to you.
Yeah,
I'll send it.
I think this is a good segue into talking about that, quite honestly, because, you know, that's come up with me a number of times. So ask the attorney, ask the legal hotline, and they say, what I hear them say is, it's up, you can send it, and if the listing agent receives it, they have to share it with their client. They have no choice.
Typically, the way I look at it is usually the issue is around a disclosure issue. And sometimes what I'll do is on my Mac, I'll just take a snapshot of that one specific thing on that inspection report and start with that. If that doesn't help, we've all been in a situation where you went and showed a house and it's supposed to be this, and obviously it's not. And the report comes out and it's a bloodbath, and there's stuff behind the walls and things that weren't disclosed. And sometimes I look back and I say, you know what, if this is gonna hurt the next person in line, the next person in line, the next person in line, then it's your job to kind of step to the plate and say, hey, this is just a downhill spiral. So.
So are you saying that you should give the inspection report to the listing agent?
Case by case. I mean, it's very seldom when you want to send it over. It's got to be a pretty challenging deal.
Agreed.
Dealing with.
Sometimes
But you just don't. If you got 4 things to ask for in an amendment, you don't send the report. You know, because just in case your deal does fall apart and that individual's back on the market, you know, I mean, they should go back and address the things you've already negotiated. But yeah, that's the whole purpose of having houses pre-inspected. You know, it saves you a lot of time and effort down the road.
We've gotten back to pre-inspections as the market, I think, is starting to slow, and it just saves a lot of time and energy. And on the flip side, if I get an inspection report from a buyer, and I know there are people out there that just send them every deal, it's going to be an attachment in MLS, and I'm going to use it as leverage for the next buyer. You know, use it like, you know, I've listings where I don't do pre-inspections, and the seller did not want to pay for it, did not want to do it, and if you send me your inspection report, it's mine. I'm using it. And I know some agents don't like that. They want it both ways. You know.
Well, just ask the agent, do you want the inspection report? You're
Yeah.
negotiating repairs. I'm happy to send this to you if you like, otherwise I do snapshots. They don't want it. I explain to my buyer, because I've had buyers say, just send them the report, and I say, no, let's think about this. Think about what happens in the future with this report. Every inspector is different. You'll see different things on the report, and usually they agree, well, let's not send it if we don't have to.
Yeah, if we're close to making a deal, and it's a few things, and sometimes it's good to have that report.
I know, but lately I've been seeing agents who, they'll just send me the report. I mean, and you're like, whoa, you get it in your email, and you're like, holy cow. So, and there's no really reason behind it. But I'm like y'all, a lot of times I'll just say, or I'll say if I'm negotiating, I'm representing the buyer, I will say, do you want the report? And a lot of times they'll say, yes, send it on over. My sellers want to see it. They don't think this stuff is real. And you're like, great. But that shooting it off without a warning or just doing it because you think it gives you leverage for negotiating, I don't think it always does. I think it can bite you sometimes. But again, every deal's different. It's case by case, so.
Yeah, it's not very
I like the
cooperative.
snapshots.
Yeah.
That I'm like, great. Because you can show your seller and you can say, this will happen again. We have to disclose it. You know, the next buyer, if we get that far, you know, if you give them the information up front the next time, then sometimes you can get that deal done with that snapshot.
Yes, ma'am.
What I've seen is sometimes the inspectors will actually condense, like, into a summary. I mean, is that okay to send over?
No, it's the same thing.
She said that sometimes the inspectors condense the report into a summary at the end, and then is that okay to send over? What I'm hearing the panel say is think before you send. There are consequences of sending it for all parties involved, and it may be that it is the best decision for you, for your buyer, and maybe it's not or is the best decision for the seller. It just depends on the situation. Don't just hit send, think about it, maybe even discuss it with the other agent if that's an appropriate thing to do. just think through it, because there are consequences. And we know now that a lot of people are really annoyed when somebody just shoots that off. So maybe if you do shoot it off, you can communicate to those folks why you did, and
Right.
that, hey, this was,
Yeah,
there was a reason for
the
it.
agents that send it off, just all the time and think it's not in the spirit of cooperation.
Understood. Customers expect their agent to fight for them and to get the best deal terms. At times, customers want their agents to fight for their unreasonable expectations. What is an example of a real-life situation where you're faced with this situation, and how would you handle it? An unreasonable client asks you to do something that's unreasonable. How do you handle it?
I think I've just said, I always tell my clients I'm going to offer my professional opinion and guidance and all of that. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to do whatever you ask me to do. That's my job. But just so you know, I don't necessarily agree, and here's how I think, what we could do to possibly make, work it out. But I definitely have that conversation with my client that I don't exactly agree with the way you're wanting me to present this. Here's how I would like to present it. And I think a lot of time my clients, very rarely do I have someone that's just like, no. Every once in a while, but anyway, I think be honest with your client about how you feel about going back to the other party with that information. And because they don't do it every day, they may not have thought it through,
Yeah, I think it all goes back to pick your clients wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to communicate with your clients just as much as you got to communicate with realtors. So that's where it starts. And, you can tell real quick if they're going to be a challenge, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to work with that or not. But we typically don't. We're the advisor. That's what we're there for. We want the respect of our clients as much as they want ours. And I think it's important to set the tone right up front that that's how, we'll have the conversation, and usually we can talk them off the fence, because sometimes they get a little heated in the emotional side. And our job is to be the neutral party that's able to think calmly about how the situation should go. And so we should be able to provide examples from our experience and why that may not be a good idea. Fortunately, that hasn't happened very often to us, but I can see how you can lose control of a client pretty quickly if they're that way.
Well, sometimes I think reasonable people can do unreasonable things, and sometimes the buyers especially have to get their own experience. I wrote an offer this week on a listing that was $550,000, and the buyer, who was a very nice lady, and I like her a lot, wrote a 2-page essay on why the seller should take $50,000 less on that property. And I went through counterpoint with her and eliminated about half of her reasoning, and explained that particular segment of the market trades at 98% of list price. But in the end, it was her first offer, and she's going to have to lose it in order to get better at the next deal.
I think one thing that we find out as agents, it's really about 15% real estate and 85% counseling.
Yeah, it is.
Don't you think? And so I always go back to, what is your goal? Forget the real estate. Where are we trying to get? Well, we want to buy a house. And then when you have that scenario, well, it's customary not to knock 50,000 off on the first offer and write a long letter.
Yeah.
And you counsel them, so we're probably not going to get that house. So let's get back to the goal. How do we get the house?
Well,
really just setting those expectations.
Yeah, and what I liked what the listing agent did was not counter and wrote an invitation to send another, to resubmit, and the reasoning, the blank was write an offer closer to list price. I'm like, hey.
Well, and we're also in an industry where, it's, of course, financial, and then it's emotional. So you're always dealing with those two items. And if you're finding out something at 7 p.m., sometimes it's not the best time to go back to the party that you're representing and saying, well, this is what they want, or you know what I mean, or this is what they said. Where you can talk about it and then say sleep on it, especially if they get really, really angry about it. I'm not going to do that and blah, 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 blah. I think another thing, and I don't know if people are going to agree with me or not, but I don't always tell the person I'm representing what that other agent said. Like,
Of course.
this morning I had a phone call from a
Yeah.
guy that my the house has gone back on the market. And so he called me and he said, I just want you to know that you have, oh, wait, hold on. Damaged goods. Your listing is damaged goods. And that's how he started it off with me this morning. And I was like, this is a perfect thing to say today, because and he's like, and I think we're going to make an offer on the house. And I was like, so I'm, my human nature is, okay, well, great, this could be a very interesting negotiation. But then I'm like, okay, step away. And I don't go tell that to my seller. I don't say, guess what, here comes an offer, and he says it's damaged goods. Yeah. So, that's a very interesting, watch what you say.
He's positioning.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm like, I don't think it does any good.
One
really
thing that I think is important to point out is, we've got a great market, and it's not going to be great forever. I'm always wondering when the next downturn is, and it's easy to sell houses when the market's doing this, but man, when it goes the other direction, it's really hard to talk clients into pricing where they need to be, price ahead of the market, right? But you're pricing down, and gosh, it just seems like 2009 was yesterday to me. But I think it's, my favorite saying, just some of this conversation reminded me of one of my favorite scripts, when you have a client that is pushing back on whether it's a price or whatever it is, just to say, look, with all us realtors have been around a while, we all joke about being the, wanting to be the third realtor, right? Because the first two get fired, they can't get it sold. By the time it gets to the third, the seller is willing to price it at whatever it takes, right? And they do nothing and they get it sold. So that's something I use with my clients all the time. I'll say, look, I understand that you're frustrated that the market, or you're not getting it sold, but, we need to adjust it. I don't need to be, fired. It'll get sold at the right price. I think communication is a whole nother discussion that really, with our customers, that can really help in how we communicate and cooperate with other realtors. So a part of cooperation is our job on the back end with our customers, is my point. Anything else on that topic? So, you're selling a house and want to see it in person to compare to your new similar listing in the same neighborhood. Is it okay to view the house without notifying the listing agent that you're looking to compare with your own listing? Let's assume that it's go in the MLS, which is really easy because you can just pop in and pop out. And then maybe you get a call and they say, hey, what did you think of the house? And what do you tell them? Assume it's call first go, or assume it's appointment with agent. But what do y'all think? Is it appropriate? A lot of agents will go in and they'll show a listing of mine and they'll say, oh, I was previewing it. Well, do you really have a client? Or are you going to list something around the corner? So what do y'all think? Is it appropriate?
I think it depends on the deal. If we have to get ready on a big house, that's different. I think we need to know up front that that's what it is. I've had a few agents that have done that, bring the clients that live 3 houses down through the house to act like they're buyers. I mean, there's not a point for that, but we got really ready for the showing. I think there's value in that. I think you can still get feedback, honest feedback from a listing agent that's listing one down the street, and maybe you get to go see theirs too, and then you can provide some good feedback to your seller. But if it's a go or something like that, or call first go, I don't think there's a big deal. I think it just depends on what the size of the listing is and how much preparation is going into it. And I think going back to communication, I think it's important. I think I would call and say, hey, I'm coming to see it. I'm listing one down the street. If you want to come see mine, blah, blah, blah. But that's just part of the communication. I think it's part of the process. And I think it's important for us to be able to see other listings that are on the market in the neighborhood. It helps us determine where our pricing is and if ours has got some deficiencies that one doesn't, or vice versa. So
yeah, it's all about being respectful. I mean, if your client if your neighbor wants to see the house, send them during an open house, or call the agent and say, hey, do you mind if I piggyback on your next listing?
Right.
I'll come 15 minutes after your showing. Exactly. I mean, that's just common courtesy.
Well, and use it, because your sellers like to know about other houses in the neighborhood before they're on the market. So then you're actually helping them in the long run too. But I agree with Will. Just if somebody calls, says, can I piggyback when you're going to be over there anyway, so you don't have to go, your seller doesn't have to do anything.
That's awesome.
Additional work.
Yeah.
But I think you should always be honest with the other agent about what your goal is.
Just remember karma.
Yeah, absolutely.
It always comes back, yeah.
Renee, have you seen my clicker? Ah, there it is. Got it. Just want to make sure. All right, so another scenario, you're selling a house and a buyer's agent contacts you asking whether the property would rent or lease out for the mortgage payment, taxes and insurance included. Is it the listing agent's job to run the numbers or the buyer agent's job to run the numbers? What do you think?
If the buyer's agent is unable to come up with those equations and you need to sell the house, then it's a listing agent's job.
Anybody else?
Well, it's all about liability too, you know, you always have to make sure you have a disclosure in there that this is you're not giving financial advice or, so you just gotta be cautious. I'm all about selling a listing. If someone doesn't have the capability or the technology or whatever it is to give their client what they need to get them satisfied, then sure, come up with it, right?
Tell them to ask their broker. Go to your broker. I wouldn't want to give that information. I agree, whatever it takes to get it listed, but I think that's also what they need to be doing too. And figuring, I don't want that liability.
It depends on the listing. I've got a listing right now that if you wanted me to give you the equation, I'd be happy to give it to you. I'll take the liability.
I don't think it's a good idea for the buyer's agent to do it. I don't think the buyer's agent really needs to do that. If you're the listing agent, I'm sorry, I'm gonna look at every single listing out there in a little bit different light than what a buyer would if I'm representing the seller. So I'm be happy to give it to you, but I wouldn't use it with my seller or with my buyer necessarily.
And one thing I always leave it with is you can look at any comp in a neighborhood, but market price is what a buyer is willing to pay today, not yesterday or across the street. So, you can run any number you can, but at the end of the day, there'll be a buyer coming in that's willing to pay a certain price. That's market, right?
That's right.
So should a listing agent contact a buyer's lender directly?
Yeah,
Yes.
why not?
Of course.
TAR says no, just so you know.
Do they really?
They really do.
When I make an offer,
Is that a rule?
Slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I
Really?
called TAR's legal hotline and they say you should not interfere with a buyer's loan.
Okay, I'm
And
gonna
that
wait.
could be
You're not
considered
interfering,
interference.
You're calling to confirm.
Yeah, I'm
You're
gonna,
calling to confirm.
Yeah, what if they don't give you a
Because
pre-qual
one
letter?
time there was a person who had a pre-qualification letter, and it was a fake.
Nice.
So you just call to confirm and say, I just say, hi, I've got this listing. Is this your letter? And if they say yes, then I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
But there was a time when a person made it up.
Oh, yeah.
And even throughout the transaction, you're gonna follow up with them. Until fines start coming down, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Well, I've actually called the TAR legal hotline and gotten different answers from different people. Yeah, you can't always assume that what they say is right. It's like the city of Austin. They're gonna put the burden on you, and they'll answer to protect them.
hopefully,
Whoa.
if you're representing a buyer, you've already talked to that lender before you make your offer. And then when I submit my offer and do my warm and fuzzy letter, I say, feel free to call the lender. And I've already talked to the lender, so I know what he's gonna say.
Yeah. I would consider it fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah. I think your seller would want to know that it's a real deal.
Holly, did you have a question? I saw your hand up. When I call a lender, I want to know as much as possible. That's just me. And where's the line, right? And that's the challenge. Because when I call, I want them to open up. Is this a slam dunk? Or is there a possibility that, one thing or another may not work out? And what is it that I don't know? And who are they getting a loan from? And
The lenders that I work with on those deals, I encourage them to call the other side and just introduce themselves. Usually it's a good idea for them to do it anyways. They're trying to grow their business, but I think it's just a courtesy and a proactive way to go about saying, look, these clients are solid as they get. This is a good client, and just to let you know, if you have any questions, here's my contact information. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as they're not sharing financial information with you about their client. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's a good move right there.
Laura?
Brian, on your last question, I'm sorry to go back, but I think it's kind of important since there's still a lot of bad information in real lists. And as a buyer's agent, you're relying on that information and the information that's in the listing. So I would really encourage the listing agents to review all of the information that's in the real list for their listing, and also make sure that it's all accurate, schools are accurate, taxes are accurate. And I mean, I've even seen the owner not be accurate in the real list printout. And then make sure that your information in the listing is both complete and that the information is accurate.
Great point. Thank you for pointing that out. I have noticed myself, I've run across instances where Realist's information is not accurate.
Report it to the board, because they will go to Realist and get it corrected. I sent one this morning.
The only way that I know to cross-check it is to go directly to the city or the county, whatever the direct website is that has the information, because Realist is not always necessarily correct. And there's all kinds of liability that's out there for putting in, the wrong, I mean, you can get sued if you put in the square footage that's in the tax records or, that the city has or whatever. So you've just got to be careful. We, as a company, try to look and cross-check whatever the legal description is with the actual tax records, the actual legal description.
Sometimes it's perfectly obvious, like it's Round Rock, but they put schools in East Austin in.
Right.
Put them in, or, for sure that it's a one-bedroom, one-bath, and not a two-bedroom, two-bath, which is what I had this morning. I mean, so some of it's perfectly obvious, you just have to review it, and then some of it's not. Like when the Round Rock taxes were only feeding half of the tax into the real list, you just have to really watch it.
Mind the details and actually look at the information in your listing to make sure it's correct. So, yes, ma'am.
In terms of following up with the lender and the necessity of that, I have had offers, unfortunately, only one instance, but at this point, where when I asked the seller, or the buyer needed to sell anything, and the buyer had told the realtor that they did not, but when I checked with the lender, they said, oh, absolutely. We would have gone into contract on that, or we could have gone into contract without me asking that question. That's a standard question.
Thank you.
Did the panelists and others change the estimated tax to the rate times the list price?
What's the question again?
When you pull the information and it has estimated tax, they're usually based on the last tax year versus if you've upped the sales price or the list price.
You just want it as accurate as you can get it. Yes, ma'am.
We're not projecting taxes.
Closing disclosure, it's going to be very important for both the listing agent and the selling agent to talk with the lender, because the lender needs to know if there are repairs that have to go on to the closing document. I think it's going to be they need to know what the commission is. There's going to be a lot of information, so I think there needs to be a cooperation among all of the entities in the transaction.
Although you're gonna have to have permission in writing from your client.
From the buyer, that's true.
You're gonna have to have permission in writing to speak to the lender, or the lender will not speak with you. That's my
But they're going to need, in order for them to prepare the document, they're going to need.
Without disclosing anything.
Right. Yeah, I was just saying, a good lender is going to tell you what you want to hear if you're a listing agent without violating any trust.
Those are all the questions I have. I want to open it up to the group to ask any questions related to our time together, anything that has come to mind during our time together, even answers to questions that you guys feel like weren't addressed in our time together. So, sir, go ahead.
How do you guys feel about the strategy of course it's a cash offer,
He said that, how do you feel about a situation where it's a cash offer and then when it comes to closing, it's not?
Did they provide,
It's a strategy.
well, did they have proof of funds?
Yeah, we always ask for proof of funds.
Yeah.
And if we do, we don't care.
Well, I think my thoughts are, if it closes on the exact time and I don't know about it, then I'm not really worried about it. But I mean, you know, when it comes down to it, on the close date, and there's a loan, and they, you know, have cash to back it up, and suddenly they don't, then that's a bad tactic.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Did everybody hear that? Okay. Panelists, what do you think?
It's a terrible listing agent.
I might go to their.
I would take all offers from my clients in your best interest to take them. If you say you're gonna wait, then you wait. I don't care what the offers are.
But how do you fix it? I mean, do you go to the, how do you
I'd probably go to their broker.
go to the broker?
Wait, so run that by me again. What was that?
So the scenario was you are representing a buyer, you're going to put an offer in, you call the listing agent says, we've got to, you know, we're going to be taking offers until Tuesday at
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
And so you wait until Tuesday at 11
Yeah.
to submit your offer. You submit it, and he says, oh, well, we already accepted another one.
Did they know you were going to present the offer? Had you called and said, I'm bringing you an offer?
On one of them, yes. The other one, you know, they had mentioned several times that this was their cutoff time. So, my guy was still debating on whether or not he was going to. So, but I mean, it was still several hours before, you know, the deadline.
I think
Heads up, we're gonna be submitting an offer. Too late.
it just goes back to communication. Again, I think you have to tell the agent, hey, look, you know, I've got somebody that's on the fence, but don't shut it down before I get this in. You guys, you know, that way they know. I think it's just open communication.
Well, in general, I would agree, but I had a listing that we priced at $640 in Barton Hills, and you know, we were going to wait till Sunday, and it's not going to appraise for much more than $640, and we got an offer at $720, and you know, the seller did not want to wait. So, and you know, no third-party financing. I mean, it was solid, and I could promise you we weren't going to get an offer higher than that, and you were out. So we took it.
There's a risk by waiting. There is. There's a risk by submitting early.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think communication is important, and that's where cooperation comes in, because if I want to do a deal with Ashley and we're kind of both Southwest and we're in that situation, I might say, hey, can I submit this? Or if you get another offer that you're going to take, will you at least let me know so I can give you what I've got, or whatever. But communication is key. I think it's important to know that sometimes you're just going to lose, whatever the scenario is. Sometimes you're going to lose. And even in effort to cooperate, sometimes you're not going to make it work. But the key, I think, in the moral of part of our time together today is the effort. It's putting yourself in the best position possible to have a successful sale. Yes, ma'am.
Ultimately, it becomes the seller's decision. We're representing the seller, and in my thoughts, so if, like he said, if they want to take it early, they have the choice of taking it early. And so maybe what we can do is if we take something early, we can also update the MLS, given that we'll try to remember that.
Or even maybe a phone call to everybody saying, hey,
Yeah.
hey, we're
cutting it
accelerating.
short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is all about communication. So if you've had that call, then now they know to call you to let you know they're getting ready to cut this thing short. So unless you're bringing $50,000 over asking, you're probably going to be out.
Yeah. Right.
What other questions? Diane?
So I think one of the, best tools that we have was built on cooperation, and that's our MLS. And I've seen in this market a
You're saying putting, inputting an off-market listing into MLS? Yeah.
Whenever it's reasonable, I know there's going to be situations.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, but I think sometimes, if
Yeah.
you sell it before it goes into the MLS, still put it in as a comp.
Yeah, I personally, I've kind of pissed off a few people because in a lot of cases, I will not let a property be shown until it's on the market. And, I've seen a lot of agents that bragging that they sold something on 0 days on the market. Well, if you sold something on 0 days in the market and it was put pending for after it was active, the market didn't get a response. The market didn't get a chance to respond to that listing. And I think it's almost malpractice to sell. Now, obviously there's exceptions, but I see a lot of listings that are sold off market, and I just think it's in this market, it's negligence in most cases.
Any other thoughts about off MLS listings?
And Diane, I understand what you're saying and agree, but for instance, I've just had somebody buy something off market. They were very concerned about their privacy. They didn't want, their taxes to shoot up, which they would have if it had been put in MLS because it had never been seen. No, but it would go to sale price. They would automatically, the tax district looked back. And I agree with you. And we had some issues with appraisal for exactly the reason you're saying. We knew there had been sales in this area, but we didn't have the MLS to substantiate it. So I see both sides.
And it all comes down to the seller, I think, too. I have a lot of sellers that say absolutely 100% don't want it in the MLS for a lot of reasons. Mostly privacy and security, but we use the MLS as a tool, absolutely, and we try to put as many of those in there, especially if we sell them off market, and record the sale because it helps. Typically, it'll help the market. If we sell something off market, we're usually getting a better value for it because we're going to get full price. It's not even on the market yet as our response if somebody brings us an offer that's less, and we won't necessarily sell it if we're not getting our price without bringing it to the market. But we always try to record it. But if it's a $15 million listing and the taxes have it at 2, you're talking about a very large swing and in some cases a reason for a buyer not to buy that place.
Well, yeah, that's what I was just about to ask. You guys are talking about super high-end luxury.
That's where they usually go.
Right,
That's where it happens.
but and I agree with that in most cases, but, in the normal world where most buyers, I think
you should record it.
Yeah.
Right.
It helps everybody.
Should we start talking about syndication? That's a joke. Never mind. Never mind. I'm going to take one last question, and then I've got a short closing presentation. So one last question for you in the back.
I've noticed on a lot of forums and stuff on Facebook where seasoned agents, and I'm a seasoned agent myself, are kind of attacking newer agents because they just don't have the education yet. What advice do y'all have for new agents for this market?
Ask questions.
So she had mentioned that she's following the Facebook forums. Some of the more seasoned agents just hammer the newer agents and tell them how it is. So what advice do we have for the newer agents as to how to get along?
Of how to get along, basically?
How to make it better and more cooperative.
Yeah, get some training. No, I'm serious. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I don't provide, if you're a new agent, you cannot come to my brokerage if you just got your license yesterday because I don't provide the training that you need. So, and I'm not joking at all.
I think a lot of times new agents get caught up in stuff that's not as relevant, and so they start getting on those forums and asking a little bit off-subject questions, and I can see how they can get hammered on that sometimes. But I think it all goes back to, talking to your broker and asking those questions of people that you already have relationships with. And then if you're trying to put a deal together, I love working with new agents. I think it's great. Just call me and tell me that you're new, and I will help you figure out a way to sell our property.
Yeah, I would say that I have seen more seasoned agents really act inappropriately on forums and even in person where they have this I don't know, this chip on their shoulder perspective that I know it all, and it's really easy to hammer on somebody that is less equipped and prepared. So I would encourage those that are more seasoned to be humble and to think about the impact that first impression has on the other agents, because there are a lot of agents that are newer, less experienced, that are smart people that will catch on quickly and that will be in this market. I had a top agent, first deal I did with them, just hammered on me. They had no idea that I had sold multi-million-dollar commercial properties all over the country, and they talked to me as though I was in preschool, as though a residential real estate deal was difficult or something. And it's not. Residential real estate deals are as easy as they get. It's great. It really is great. Our business is fantastic. It's a short turnaround time to get paid. And so, I think that we can all agree that we need to step outside of ourselves sometime and consider other people's feelings and the future impact of how we treat them.
I think the best thing to remember is that we were all new at one time.
Yeah.
You tell the other person, tell the other agent, be honest, this is, like Gary said, I don't think you're gonna mess them around and take them down the wrong path. Just tell them that this is one of your first deals.
Yeah.
So if I say something stupid, you know where I'm coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
So they understand it helps.
And then the flip side, if you're newer and somebody's getting frustrated with you, just be patient and ask them, and that's how we learn. I mean, we learn under pressure and stress and making mistakes. Even the most successful people in the world are successful from their failures. So let me just close this up here. Thank y'all for all the questions. Thank you, panelists, for your time and your care for the industry and making this better. I just want to kind of run over a couple of things. So cooperation does not guarantee a sale or even a positive outcome. And this is something I really wanted to stress to the group. But it does establish an environment conducive for resulting in the best outcome. We are problem solvers. We get up every single day and we solve problems. And I can tell you that there's some problem that I come across every day in this business. And the more business you do, the more problems you'll come across. And I see it for my agents as well. So if the person on the other side of the table is looking at it from a less emotional perspective and a more problem-solving perspective, here's a problem. We've got crazy clients. We've got a challenging situation. How can we get the best solution? So put that in your mind instead of panicking. Don't panic. Think of solutions and sleep on it. I heard the sleep on it thing. I get emotional about things. I sleep on it. I get up the next day and I feel differently. And I realize, hey, I need to be more reasonable. And a lot of clients will do the same. So goals for cooperation, creating goodwill. Goodwill goes a long way. It's amazing how you can improve your business if you have goodwill with other realtors. Establish credibility. It's really nice when other realtors talk well about you because you're a good person and you're a good realtor. You know that you're doing well if other people are speaking, in your own industry, are speaking well about you. Developing trust. We want to be able to trust those that we do work with on the other side of the table, and that goes a long way. Increasing our knowledge, making connections, improving the quality of life. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this. I want to enjoy my job, and it's challenging and it's stressful, but I want to know that there's more people sitting on the other side of the table that also want to enjoy their job. So let's all work together to that end goal. And we want to increase our sales. When we do these things and we accomplish these goals, we're going to do better. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. For those who have read Good to Great, they talk about a flywheel and momentum, and we get up every day and we push the flywheel. And it's really difficult at first, and it's slow, and we push and push and push. But over time, you start getting momentum and more momentum. And the next thing you know, over time, that flywheel is turning. And before you know it, you can let go, and it's just gone. And you get breakout momentum. So let's have breakout momentum in terms of cooperation, and that will translate into breakout momentum in relation to our personal sales. In the formula for cooperation, number one, choose to participate. When you start a transaction, instead of just doing it, stop and think to yourself, I'm a willing participant. The other agent is a willing participant. Let's be aware and conscious of this, and let's participate together to have a good outcome. Instead of looking at an adversary. This is somebody that we're competing with. We're not competing. We're all working towards the same end goal. It's a two-way deal. Value other lives by treating others the way you would want to be treated. We've talked a lot about the golden rule today. Communicate effectively. Communication is huge. I think people should communicate more. When they have questions, call other agents. I think we should do more phone calls, personally. Phone calls are huge, and there's nothing worse than trying to negotiate a deal by text. It's a helpful tool. It's great, but only text, ridiculous. Listen and seek to understand. If you find yourself talking a lot, and I sometimes find myself talking a lot, I need to stop. I need to be quiet, and I want to listen to the other party. Listen to your client. Listen to the other realtor. Listen, understand, find solutions. Be honest. Be respectful. Don't assume the worst of other people. The vast majority of the people you deal with, I think our intuitive instinct is to think that they have something to hide, or they're lying, or they're just working in their best interest. And there are some of those out there. But the vast majority of us are good people that have different circumstances. You don't know what's going on in their lives at that moment. You don't know why they're panicking. Maybe they have a financial situation where if the deal falls apart, they're crushed. Well, that stinks. And we need to be passionate and caring for those circumstances. So work constantly and incrementally towards the best outcome. The deal's not done until it's done. Literally until the money's in the bank. I've gotten a check, given it to my bank, and the check got kicked back. Think you got the deal done. It's not done until the money's in the bank. But work constantly and incrementally towards the best outcome, which means that, if you get one thing that you overcome, you could have something else and something else. I mean, there's always something that can happen in a deal. And my boss, when I was in commercial real estate, told me, he was a New Yorker, and he said, Brian, he said, the longer before the deal closes, the more chances for a deal to die. He said, somebody's going to get hit by a bus. That was his thing. Somebody's going to get hit by a bus. And I've literally seen, there was a house on the market on my street, went under contract, and like the week before it was supposed to close, the buyer got in a car accident on Westlake Drive, passed away. Couldn't buy the house. These things actually happen. And so we have lots of challenges throughout the path. Anything can happen. Work constantly, incrementally towards the best outcome, though. Give others the benefit of the doubt and assume the best first. And have grace, mercy, and forgiveness on others. Grace and mercy. I get up and pray every day for grace and mercy. And there's reason to forgive others. I mean, we all know that we've had realtors that have just wronged us in different ways. And so we need to put that behind us and move forward. And do what you say. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. I think Gary had mentioned that earlier. It's important. And stay calm. Solutions are better achieved when thinking clearly and not emotionally. What not to do? Don't overreact. Don't make it personal. Don't shoot the messenger. These are all things we've talked about. Don't lie or mislead, obviously. Don't make promises we can't keep. Don't participate in spiteful behavior. If you can help it, don't send that amendment at 11:52 p.m. Solicit business for customers of your peers. Oh, my goodness. I have a client. I got a new listing. Wasn't on the market yet, and the client called and said, hey, I got a call from a realtor. Okay, they want the listing, okay. I told them, of course, I have a realtor. I said, all right, what'd they say? They said, who are you working with? She said, oh, we're working with Brian Talley. He said, oh, he's not a very good realtor. You should be working with me. That's what she told, that's exactly what he had told her.
Sorry I called that guy.
Yeah. There are people out there that have this type of behavior. Let's not be that person. And don't go knock, maybe sometimes it's education, but don't go knock on somebody's door that has we all know these things. There's plenty of business out there to not impede on other people's. And let's see, don't panic. We've talked about that. So we end today, and I'm sorry we're a couple minutes late, to make a commitment to yourself and your peers moving forward. So everybody, let's make our commitment. I state your name, love selling homes, and enjoy my job. I will commit to making an endless effort to build positive, meaningful relationships with other realtors in order to enrich the lives of others and my customers and to fulfill my fiduciary obligation to my customers. Class. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to start, I'm going to start a Facebook forum, and it's going to be called Care to Cooperate. And it will be a forum that's not to share private listings and not to talk about vendors, just for a support group for all of us who have these situations, dealing in cooperation, and it'll be an encouragement and a place to go to answer questions. So if y'all see an invite to the Facebook forum, I hope that you'll all be involved. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, thanks,
and thank
Brian.
you, panelists.
Yeah, you put it together.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Nice to see you.
Okay.
Thanks for your pen. Bye.
Desmond, love you.
Okay, take care.